Hi, this is Carl the Cobra Frutch, and you're watching Lights Out.
This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law. And this is podcast 56 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. Delighted to be joined by the number one face of this platform, Mohsin Gulsher, aka Ron. Ron, how you doing, mate?
Very good. Very good.
Commiserations on the 4-0 defeat to Brentford.
We promised. This was written in the contract.
I just said commiserations. I haven't said anything bad. You know, you're only 20th in the league. You've conceded 6 goals. You spent over £100 million on defenders. What bad have I said?
Oh dear.
You know,
Let's talk about boxing.
No. Let's do something a little bit different, right? All jokes aside, you know, let's add a bit of football into it. Let's be a bit different. How many years does this project under Ten Hag take?
Well, I mean, this year is 12, 13 years since Fergie left, isn't it? It's been going on, so it's not looking too good. I think there's the Glazers just need to get the hell out of that club, man. It's become a bit toxic, and if you're the players that Man United have been linked with, Frankie de Jong, Adrian Rabiot, Arnautovic.
Good player.
Why would you come? Do you know what I mean?
Why would Arnautovic think he's bigger than Man United's biggest move of his whole career?
But even now, mate, you know, he's thinking, you know what? I'll stay in Italy. You know, I've got a peaceful life. I'm playing for Bologna, and it's going well. Well, better than Man United at the moment. So let's swiftly
It's a process.
Move on.
It's a process. Yes.
Because,
let's move on, mate. Let's move on. But one thing I will say is, and I'm not even taking a piss, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, moving on. Before we do get started, to the people out there, if you haven't, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and turn on all the bell for Lights Out Boxing notifications. We are on the road to 3,000 subscribers. If you want to listen to this podcast in any of the audio platforms, the links are below. Check us out on social media. Links are also below as well. And yeah, guys, we've got a lot to talk about today. We'll start off with the major announcement that broke through to us at the back end of last week, which was obviously the announcement I never thought I'd ever hear. You know, the announcement for Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. You know, what a fight. I was actually I criticised it a lot, didn't I?
I wasn't in favour of it. I was like, surely not.
Do you know what? After watching that press conference, I'm all for it now. And this fight is not about Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. This is the legacy fight. We are getting that. We're sort of getting the end to what was arguably one of the greatest rivalries in British boxing of all time between their fathers, who fought twice. And I just think, you know, the caption for this fight is Born Rivals. I don't think they could have got that caption any better. Because you look back at that rivalry in the 90s between the fathers, one of the greatest rivalries of all time. You know, two boxing legends, icons of the game, who were involved in some of the best fights, you know, we've ever seen. You know, you look back at those two fights, you look at Ben versus McClellan. Yeah, and the fact that we're getting this, I think we're very sport for choice. Now, again, I criticised it a lot, but now watching that press conference and sort of watching what went down with their fathers back in the day, I'm all for it. Get your thoughts on it, Ron. What do you make of it?
Just right off the bat, from just listening and watching the press conference, one thing I've got to say is quite crazy how they're both the chip off the old block for their fathers, respective fathers. Eubank is playing a certain role, and you know Ben is playing a certain role, and it mirrors how their fathers were behaving and acting in the lead up to those two fights that you spoke of. I mean, they were 3 years apart, weren't they? The rematch. I found it tasty, you know, just kind of watching the interaction, the back and forth between the two. Eubank, you know, Jr. was clearly having he had an agenda of trying to rile him up, and the responses that he was getting back, you know, were very spiteful and very kind of like, you know, we know with Conor Benn, he doesn't back down. You know, if you remember a few years ago when Senior made a comment about his dad not being there. He goes, "Who the hell are you to tell me about my,
I remember that, yeah.
And it was a similar kind of again where he said you need that father figure to hold your hand. And Ben made a very good comment. He was like, "Well, my dad hasn't really been involved in the beginning of my career. Your dad was. Your dad was in your corner, you know." And then I think Eubank kind of went back and said, I'll be your father figure. You know what I mean? I just
I've
found
had that line dropped to me a few times.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just going by the sound bites, the back and forth between the two, and it's been entertaining. And listening to Matchroom and how they're going to promote this fight, they're going to do a lot of kind of back into the background and kind of putting their stories in. But let's be honest, their fathers fought over 30 years ago. Yeah. Whenever that last fight, this is about them now. This is the next generation.
Look, you can't mention this up-and-coming fight without the fathers, both their fights. This, as you said, this is the legacy fight. There's so much history behind this.
This is what Ben said.
Have we ever been in a situation like this before, where we've had the boxers' fathers fight in the past, and now the sons, the next generation? We haven't. So this is. All right. Yeah. Okay. Right. Anyway, fair enough. Okay. Well, I asked the question, you gave me the answer, but all right. Now let's get away from the fantasy world. But this is something a lot more different, and I think the build up to this fight is going to be sort of the main seller. The only worry I actually have for this fight is there's a lot of focus on the fights with the fathers.
Yes, that too. And I mean, I'm going to touch on another comment that Eubank made about him being only 60%.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
You see, this is the issue that I have with this fight is I think Chris Eubank Jr. is taking Conor Benn very lightly. I think he's taking it very lightly. And another thing I don't like about this fight is that a lot of people are comparing it to Brook versus Golovkin. First things first, don't ever put Golovkin and Chris Eubank Jr. in the same sentence. They're two different fighters, and one's achieved a hell of a lot. The other one hasn't achieved what he should be achieving at this age, right? And Eubank is not Golovkin. Eubank doesn't carry Golovkin's power. Golovkin, at that time in 2016, when he fought Brook, was an absolute animal. To some, he still is. And I'll go back to what I said. I think Eubank's taken him very lightly, but I never expected Eubank to do anything to approach this any less.
Okay. Just want to touch on that 60% comment, right? So they're fighting at a catch weight. What was the agreed weight? 156?
156, yeah.
156.
And sorry to interrupt you, I'm also hearing that I heard an interview with Eddie Hearn, so I can't remember which platform it was, and it was something along the lines of if Conor Benn doesn't make weight, they have the option to pull out of the fight.
If Conor Benn doesn't make weight,
or Chris Eubank Jr. doesn't make the weight, they have the luxury to pull out the fight. It was something along those lines. I know that there's a fine involved for
£100,000.
Eddie Hearn stated it's more than 100,000, but he wasn't gonna tell us how much it was.
But what do you make of who does it favour more in terms of the weight, the catch weight, the rehydration? What I mean, in your opinion,
but one's going up in weight, one's coming down in weight. That's an issue right there. They're gonna have to kill themselves in this camp.
But who's gonna take more out of? Is it easier going up in weight, or is it easier coming down in weight?
I think you have to consider Eubank Jr.'s age as well. Trying to lose weight at that age, what's he 32? It's not easy.
But
Conor Benn can.
But let's I'm going to respond to that. But whenever you see Eubank Jr., he is always looking in shape. He's always
I don't doubt.
No. I'm just making that as a point.
Yeah.
If he was one of those fighters that blows up completely, starts kind of binging, does a Paddy Pimblett, then you would say,
do you know what? I've never once doubted his engine and his fitness levels. He's as fit as a fiddle. I mean, he's that type of fighter that is always going to be throwing bombs in the last couple of rounds. You've seen it against George Groves. You've seen it in all of his Billy Joe Saunders, where he's still got it in him in the 12th and final round. Yeah. But I just think trying to lose weight at his age, I could backfire on him. But having said that, the fight itself is all about, one of the main aspects of the fight is the weight. When Conor Benn mentioned it on Twitter after he fought Liam Williams, everybody asked the question, well, what weight would they do it at? Would you have to go up to 160 pounds, or would Eubank have to meet you at a catch weight? And that's my only concern about this fight. I've got no issues with the build-up. I've got no issues with both fighters having their opinion on the fight itself and what they think of the opponent. The only major factor in this fight is going to be the weight. And I say major factor, I mean it's the only factor of this fight. You don't need to sell this fight. This fight sold itself 30 years ago. Yeah. No, it sold itself 30 years ago. So you don't need to sell this fight at all. Okay? The only issue that I've got with this fight, again, is the weight. I mean, there's no doubt about it now that the hype has begun for this fight. It began when Conor Benn put that tweet out after he fought Liam Williams. Well, I just hope that we can avoid the disappointment of the fight not going ahead because one can't make the weight.
I don't think that will be the case.
Listen,
I think
it
they've got
could
a
happen.
lot riding on it. Both guys. Family honor is on the table here. Ben is obviously wants to correct that. Eubank Jr. He's always made weight. That's never been an issue throughout his career. He's always up for a challenge. Okay, he's come up short on twice against world level opposition in Groves and Billy Joe Saunders.
Yeah.
But I think he knows that this is the last few fights of his career. And he knows if he gets a great, good, solid win, be it by points or by knockout, then this sets him up financially and it gives him more of a fanfare and of a name.
Chris Eubank Jr. for winning this fight does absolutely nothing for him, by the way. It doesn't.
I think it does in terms of kind of PR, obviously, being in the big, kind of making money.
I think it does more for the name than it does for his boxing career. It doesn't do nothing for him.
I mean, I was surprised that he took it on in the first place.
So let me ask you something, right? And without sounding disrespectful, let's say he does beat Conor Benn.
Yep.
And then he somehow manages to get a fight with a Canelo.
Yep.
And Canelo says to him,
or the winner out of Canelo and Golovkin.
I'm just speaking in hindsight. Yeah, let's say he beats Conor Benn. He gets him out in 3 or 4 rounds.
Okay.
Then he gets a fight with a Canelo or one of the world champions above the 160, 168 weight category. And then Canelo, come fight week, is saying to him, well, who have you ever beaten? And he mentions Conor Benn. Canelo probably knows who Conor Benn is, but he's going to laugh at that because, number one, Conor Benn is still trying to, sort of get into that world elite level.
At 147. He's not for an elite top tier 147.
And he's naturally a 147-pound fighter.
Yeah, that's for me kind of puts him at a massive disadvantage.
It's a massive disadvantage, but again, Chris Eubank Jr., the only success he gains out winning this fight is, one, it does something for the Eubank name, and 2, he's making a big payday out of it. Winning, he can't win this fight and then at the end of it, I want Golovkin, I want Canelo,
Jake
I want
Paul.
do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, Ron, look at it from my point of view. A natural-born 160, 168 fighter is fighting a natural-born 147-pound or 140 pound going up to 147 pounds now. It does nothing for him.
It doesn't.
But if he loses this fight, forget the legacy. Eubank Jr., and he said it himself yesterday in various interviews, he has to retire. He'll walk away from boxing, and he has to.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see any, getting any world title fights any soon in that weight division that he's naturally suited to. Let's be honest, middleweight, super middleweight kind of division. So,
what role do the fathers play in this fight?
I can see how
parliamentary procedure for sure.
Yeah, can we have some parliamentary procedure here? They're playing those mirror roles of their dads. In that regards, how one is kind of just stoke that fire, and Ben's kind of being spiteful back kind of thing. It's his responses. I think both their fathers were completely chalk and cheese in terms of personalities and characters. I considered Ben as just very raw and just in your face.
A mean motherfucker.
A guy that you don't want to be kind of bumping into, in a dark alley
or on a dance floor.
Yeah, or on a dance floor. But Eubank Jr. has got a different persona about him. He's got a different persona about him. So we've seen how when Senior was in his corner, I think the reason why he was in his corner as much as he was trying to divert the attention away from Junior. Just people watch me rather than put unnecessary stress and pressure on my boy. He's still starting out in his career. But both fathers kind of have stepped away from their, Roy Jones Jr. has taken on coaching and being the cornerman, and I think that's the best move that Eubank's done. Just, Dad, look, I love having you there, I love you, but let me focus on the boxing and, obviously outside the ring and whatnot, you can give me advice. They'll be talking, both respective dads will be talking to their sons about the psychological warfare. We know how much of a role that plays in winning and losing as well. It's a battle, it's a fight that you have, and before you step into the ring, and the ring, what happens in the ring is another fight in itself. So, I think Ben will be telling his boy, look, don't get unnecessarily involved. Don't waste your emotional energy in trying to kind of.
This is where Eubank Jr.'s experience pays off, because he's been in the game a lot longer, and he's been in bigger fights. And all right, look, emotions did run high when he fought Billy Saunders. There was always that bit of rivalry there. Then obviously emotions ran high when he fought George Groves. These are big fights. Conor Benn's biggest fight has been Chris Van Herden. Samuel Vargas. He's not been in the spotlight. He's not been on a box office main event.
That's the difference between the two. At least Eubank Jr. says
I personally
better level higher in his respective weight division.
I personally, if I was Eddie Hearn, I would have let Conor Benn fight a Furman or a Broner, and then I would have put him into this fight, because I can't state
that didn't happen. Yeah.
Do you know what, Ron? I can't state enough that experience is so vital in this game. We obviously sit back and we watch it on TV and we think, that must be brilliant to be a part of. But how many pay-per-view buys is this fight going to do? It's going to do a lot. It's a pay-per-view event.
It is most
and like I said, this rivalry started 30 years ago. And it's a lot of pressure on Conor Benn. But I think, I said it last year. He's gone from being Nigel Benn's son to the Conor Benn, and he's growing. But I always said that a fight with a Furman or a Broner is exactly what he needs in his career. There's no harm if he loses this fight. Absolutely not. But the backlash of it, he could go in there and Eubank Jr. could do a number on him. You don't want to see that.
What, a stoppage you thinking?
Well, I'm not just saying any stoppage. I'm just saying an absolute beatdown. He's in there with a much taller opponent, a much heavier punching opponent, and an opponent that's 2 weights above him, 3 weights above him.
I'm going to add something else to that as well. If you look at their respective careers, Eubank Jr. has never dropped. He's never been down.
And I agree.
And
I agree
Conor Benn, the fight against Cedric Payner. Twice in one round. I mean, he was down.
He was raw.
No. I'm just young.
Do
you know what I mean? It's just saying there's levels to it. And Eubank Jr. Yes, he's been on bad decision. Not bad decision. Sorry, he's been on the wrong. He's not performed as he should have done, but he's not looked like he's going to go down. Or that fight, that was the best 6-round fight I saw. But Cedric Payner was robbed. In that first fight, most definitely. I think that. So could that play a factor that he's been down against a lesser opponent with?
Look, your first 6 fights, you're always a raw talent.
Yeah, but since then, he's
grown massively.
Massively. But his performances.
When we spoke about this on the group the other day, we mentioned the Avanesians, we mentioned the Boots Ennises, we mentioned
Virgil
Ortiz.
McKinson.
Furman in there. These fights are fights that he should have been in. So, but look, at the end of the day, you got to give credit to him. He's getting a fight we never thought we'd see. He's getting to finish off what his father and Eubank Jr.'s father started, and he's going to make a lot of money out of it.
And if he loses, his career, he carries on.
Nobody look.
No, yeah.
I'm not going to bank on him winning. I think personally, Eubank Jr. is going to stop him in 5-6 rounds. Because I just think the level of power is going to be a massive difference. I have to, and again, I'm not comparing it, but I have to go back to when Brook fought Golovkin. You watch that fight. It ended in 5 rounds. Brook gave as good as he got, but the only difference is that Golovkin's punches were 10 times more heavier than Brook's punches. Yeah. That is the difference between both fighters now. Now, I don't think Eubank carries Golovkin's power, but he's still a powerful puncher.
He's got a powerful puncher.
Exactly.
For a middleweight, middleweight. They hit a lot harder than a welterweight. That's it. It's natural science there.
We know what Eubank Jr.'s got to do to win. He's got to use his power. He's got to use the weight. How does Conor Benn beat Chris Eubank Jr.?
He's going to stay busy in the fight. He's going to frustrate him. He's going to look at the game plan that Groves used. He's going to look at the game plan that Billy Joe Saunders did. It was slick boxing. It was going to... They knew they weren't going to blast him out. Let's be honest. He's a tough SOB. Eubank Jr. I've got I know your brother is a big fan of his, but that's one thing about him that he doesn't go down. Remember, he made that comment where he said, "My corner doesn't do towels." But that's his attitude. That's it. That's the way he approaches boxing, and that's something I admire about him. That he's got a good, solid chin. He can take a punch well, and he can give them back as well. Both of them are volume punchers. They throw quick, kind of combinations. But for Conor Benn to win this fight, he's got to be busy. He's got to be kind of using that jab, moving around, kind of setting up traps for him to kind of walk into and look good in front of the judges. I don't think he's going to stop him. I don't think anyone's expecting that. I'd love to see the odds for that. For Conor Benn.
Someone might be a rich man come up.
Yeah, so it might be worth a flutter. But if I was a betting man like yourself, I wouldn't gamble on it that he's going to win by stoppage at all. I think, the reason I've said that he needs to keep busy. He needs to, his footwork has to be on point. But we've said about Eubank. His boxing's come on since working with Roy Jones. He's kind of ironed out all those kind of faults that he had.
He said the other day that he would like his dad in his corner for this fight. I'm a bit surprised by that. You've got one of the greatest fighters of all time training.
Is he going to be in his corner?
No, I don't know. I hope not.
I hope not. I think for both of them,
it just makes you think, what have you got Roy Jones Jr. for?
Yeah.
Well, one of the greatest fighters. Nigel Benn doesn't get involved. Nigel Benn has done, right? Nigel Benn has shown so much faith and trust in Tony Sims, and it's worked. It's worked massively. Tony Sims is a very, very good boxing coach.
I think it's quite.
You look at Tony Sims' gym right now. Look at the likes of the Felix Cashes. Look at these fighters that he's training and how he's improving them massively. That's the difference between Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. Conor Benn knows what he needs. Eubank Jr. should be privileged to have someone like Roy Jones Jr. in his corner because, there's been a few improvements. I wouldn't say there's been a massive, massive improvement, but there has been some improvements. But I will always state by what I've said for a number of months is we'll know more when he fights the elite fighters at 160, 168, whether he has improved or not. Whether he has... Listen, it's all good fighting the Marcus Morrisons and the Liam Williams. When you come up against the elite fighters... That's when you'll know if this relationship between fighter and trainer has worked. We can't judge Eubank Jr. from these previous fights he's had. And I don't think we can even judge him in this fight because everyone's expecting him to win. But listen, October the 8th, rivals reignited, born rivals, it all goes down. Part 3 of one of the greatest boxing rivalries of all time. I ripped into it, but watching that press conference and sort of watching... clips of their fathers, I'm all for it now and I'm looking forward to it. Let's move on because Tyson Fury relinquished his Ring Magazine world title. Listen, Ron, we're just going to have to dive straight into this. You know how much of a big fan I am of the Gypsy King.
Not noticed at all.
Massive fan of Tyson Fury. In my opinion, he's the number one heavyweight in the world. He's my number one heavyweight of this era. But, last week, following him,
it's just been...
I don't buy the Chisora third fight. I don't see the point.
Even Chisora even bought that. It was like, mate,
It's unnecessary. I don't buy this exhibition with...
Was it let me do you a favour because you're trying to make as much money as you can in boxing. Let me give you one last good payday. I don't know. They've got a friendship.
No, the rumour... Well, Tyson Fury says that is you betted against me when I fought Dillian Whyte. And you were supposed to be my friend, and for that I have to smash your face in. Look, at the end of the day, right, let's just get down to it. He come out on his birthday and said he's now officially retired from boxing. Okay, that's fine. So he's vacated the Ring Magazine belt, which has now been upgraded to the Usyk Joshua rematch. Why has he not vacated the WBC belt? Look, again, I'm a big fan. My favourite fighter in the world today. But if you've got no intention of defending that belt from December onwards or never defending it again, then you should vacate that belt. And why not put it in with the Joe Joyce Joseph Parker fight? Let them fight for a vacant title.
Depends where they are in the WBC rankings, isn't it? So you have to look at it in that sense.
Well, but at the end of the day, there's 8 or 10 heavyweights right now that will look at this current situation and think, yeah, do you know what? I think I should be worthy of fighting for that belt if you're not going to look to defend it anytime
3
soon.
words: Muhammad Ali Trophy, man. Make it with the heavyweights. WBC on the line.
Yeah, well, you find it. No, but look, not a
I
bad
mean, I'd
idea.
love to, but
It's not a bad idea, you know.
Do you know what I mean? There you go. WBC on the line. That goes to the winner.
With the Muhammad Ali Trophy.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a great idea, but is it going to happen? Yeah. Probably not. But at the end of the day, look.
so
Where do you stand on this?
I think Eddie Hearn kind of put it perfectly. I think Eddie Hearn, he said it is kind of like Tyson's kind of going through a bit of bipolar right now. Kind of
Yes.
with 1 minute he's saying, I'll fight for free. Next minute he's saying, I'll fight for $500 million. Then he's offering Chisora, out calling him out.
Thorn Bjornsson.
Thorn Bjornsson turning up in Iceland. Yeah, hey, Jim, where are you? And then retiring on his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the fuck?
Do you know what I mean?
It's just so, it's like a bit of a soap opera. But that's it with Tyson Fury. That's why he's clickbait on social media whenever he speaks up, be it about mental health, be it about controversial comments that's coming out of his mouth, or be it about putting on masterclasses. Like him or loathe him, you know, you're gonna watch him.
100%.
You know? And even now, we're just like, we don't believe him. We don't trust him. You know,
I mean, I was discussing this the other day with a family member, and he said to me that what is, you know, you're always attending these events, you know, you're always uploading and you're always reading, which is, you know, which is what I do with Lights Out. And he said to me, look, if you had to come out and say to everybody what Tyson Fury's next move is going to be, what do you think it's going to be? And I honestly think his next move is going to be something that is very unexpected. I can't see the fight with the winner of Usyk and Joshua happening. I just can't, because if there was any time for that fight to happen, it should have been last year when they were both world champions before Joshua lost to Usyk. I think there's something. I mean, I've also heard that he's doing a documentary for Netflix.
yes.
10 episodes, whatever it is. So that keeps him busy. You know, I also read somewhere that WWE wanted him back for another.
Well, he's not short on offer. Let's be honest.
For a second bite at WWE. Yeah. I mean, you got to remember, this is a man that's been full hands-on in boxing since his return in 2018. You know,
Seen the highs and lows of the sport as well.
I'm talking about like when we went to Manchester and covered his comeback fight. Everything in that division, you know, the main focus has been on him because of what happened before the comeback. And then he comes back, and then, you know, everyone's asking the question: has he still got what it takes? And he's had 3 grueling fights with Deontay Wilder, which took its toll. And then the fight with Dillian Whyte becomes the biggest sellout in Wembley. You know, one of the biggest.
A few minutes.
Yeah. So it's just a case of what he wants to do next. You know, I genuinely think he wants to fight again, but he's looked at the whole politics with the Joshua, the Usyk thing, and I don't think he's a man that likes to wait around. So I can see him doing something very unexpected next, but I don't think it's to do with boxing. But if his plan is not to return to boxing, then for goodness sake, vacate that WBC belt.
Has he got a bit of time on that to make?
Well, he's had his time. I mean,
no. But when does he?
So he was, I believe in
when
May he was given enough. Well, I believe in June.
Who's the challenger for the WBC?
Well, I believe in June he was given a month's extension by Maritza Sullivan for. Okay. They ordered a mandatory.
Who's the mandatory? No. Actually, it's not a mandatory next, is it? He can fight. That's why he was pursuing that Chisora fight.
Well, the mandatory was Dillian Whyte, so now he can pursue it if he wants. But
mandatory was Dillian Whyte. Yep,
the mandatory was
So that's why he put.
Dillian Whyte was mandatory bloody for how many years?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, right? Look, I mean, you look at the WBC route. I mean, you got Parker and Joyce who are number 1 and number 2 with the WBO or the WBA. Deontay Wilder, we'll talk about him in a bit. Daniel Dubois, I mean...
He's not, he's too...
Is there anyone that...
Joe Joyce would have... Oh, I don't like that matchup. Joe Joyce and Fury. Because of the size,
no,
because
Ron,
of
I
the...
mean, we've...
No, but we know the end result, but... Yeah.
Ron, he's beaten he's beaten the Wilders, he's beaten the Dillian Whytes, he's beaten Derek Chisora twice in the past. If he is going to have that one last dance, it has to be the winner of Usyk and Joshua.
Without doubt.
I don't want to see a third fight with Derek Chisora. Nobody wants to see the Francis Ngannou fight. What we want to see is an undisputed world champion, and we are only 2 fights away from crowning an undisputed champion. But what do you think he does next, honestly?
I honestly can't keep up with the guy. That's my genuine answer. I can't say. I, as a boxing fan, really hope for the undisputed clash. You know, come on, stop fucking about. This fight's happening in August. We'll get a result either way. One of you, you know, unless they have a rematch clause in this. Let's just say Joshua wins out. What happens then? Does Usyk have a rematch?
I don't know.
But that's. I mean, let's just put that to the
It's
side.
convenient how Joshua's lost twice, and then all of a sudden there's a rematch clause. So if Usyk loses next Saturday, is he entitled to a rematch?
I mean, it depends on their management.
Was Ruiz ever entitled to a rematch when he lost to Joshua?
Well, this is it. It depends on the management.
It's all swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. But that's what I would love for that to happen. Let's just say they fix in a date for February next year. Brilliant. Something for us to look forward to. That's enough time between August and February. Let's be honest, that Anthony Joshua fights, once a year now? Twice a year if we're lucky. You know, his last fight was in September 2021.
Which is last year, yeah.
Which was last year. It's bloody been a year. Like, obviously there's been lots of kind of complications with what's happening in Ukraine, and sadly, and that's what's delayed it. That was supposed to happen at an earlier point. But I don't know if we're going to get that. Like, you know, you just pointed out that he still has his WBC title. He's just lost the Ring magazine. That's going to be up for grabs. Vacated.
Yeah, that's going towards the Joshua fight now. Yeah, that's going towards that path. Yeah, it's all up in the air at the moment on what the Gypsy King does next. You know, the ideal outcome of this would be, let's say Joshua does beat Usyk. Let's build Joshua Fury fight for next summer at Wembley. You know,
February,
whenever. But that fight, if that fight does happen, let's take
it's going to be the biggest day.
It's going to be the biggest fight of all time.
Let's just say it better not be in Saudi Arabia or the UAE or any other countries. I mean,
as Eddie Hearn always says, boxing is all about where the money goes. So,
it is. You know, I mean, where we wouldn't have expected him to be having his rematch in Saudi Arabia.
I remember watching the bloody the Joshua Ruiz second fight, listening to Sweet Caroline being played in Saudi Arabia. I heard more noise in 5 years of assemblies in high school than I did. And you're going to have to go through all of that again in the rematch. But listen, it is what it is. Let's just talk a bit about a few rumours that are going around in the boxing world. We'll stay on the heavyweight scene. Deontay Wilder is planning a comeback to the ring, which I'm very pleased to hear.
He should. You know, he lost. You know, it happens.
And we're hearing the likely opponent is going to be Robert Helenius, who's coming off the back of...
No, Helenius has been linked with Deontay Wilder.
Sorry, who's the...
You were talking about Dillian Whyte, weren't you?
Sorry, Dillian Whyte, yeah. So Dillian Whyte, apparently, was looking to come back into the sport, which is a good thing, you know, nothing to be ashamed of. He lost to Tyson Fury. And the rumours are that he could be set to face Daniel Dubois next, from what I've heard on social media and from what I've heard through other people in the boxing world. No names mentioned, that apparently there has been a contract sent to Dillian Whyte to fight Daniel Dubois. I actually think that's a good fight. I think
it was a fight that Shane McGuigan called for.
Yeah.
After their win against something that he still hasn't been paid for, by the way.
Well,
Daniel Ryan, wasn't it?
I'm actually surprised for starters, I'm actually surprised that Dillian Whyte wants to work with Frank Warren again, because you look back to the build up with Tyson Fury, and he goes that working with these guys has been impossible. But they still made it happen. He still fought for Tyson Fury. Look, Dillian Whyte, I think the best fight for him is Derek Chisora 3. I think that's a perfect fight to make now.
It's not backward step.
It's not backward step. Yeah. That's a seller.
It's a
seller, and it's a fight that people want to watch. Because one, it's an absolute barroom brawl, and two, the build up to it's the most entertaining thing.
But what does that tell you about Dillian Whyte's career? You know what I mean? Let's be honest, Chisora we see and recognise as a gatekeeper right now.
Okay? I've never once considered him a journeyman. I don't know why he calls himself the gatekeeper, because I still think Chisora's a problem for anybody.
He is. But what does that say about Dillian Whyte, that he has to go back to him a third time? You know, he wants Dillian Whyte thinking, all right, Tyson Fury is potentially out of the picture, yeah? If he's retiring, if he's saying he's done and dusted. He wants to be kind of fighting that elite level of fighters. You've got Deontay Wilder, that would be a great fight. I mean, I'd rather prefer a Joseph Parker rematch, but they're kind of fighting it off, Joseph Parker
and Joe Joyce,
and Joe Joyce. maybe the winner of that could be a great fight. You know, Daniel Dubois, I like the look of. Okay, that's a great fight.
Look, Whyte Dubois is actually a decent fight, and it's for a version of the world title. So if Dillian Whyte wins that,
What is it, interim?
No,
Is
it's
it
a WBA
silver?
regular. So
I can't keep up. Anyway,
anyway, let's not go into the whole governing bodies debate. But I mean, I don't think Daniel Dubois should be taking this fight. I mean, look, since he lost to Joe Joyce, he's not been tested again. He needs to have a test.
Okay.
Trevor Bryan was not a test. You know,
He was an undefeated American.
Oh.
I mean, obviously.
but who did he ever fight though?
He was obviously overhyped.
Come on, mate. Let's not take the piss here, really.
Okay, well, we've gone in. You're Daniel Dubois.
The winner of
Dubois
Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce should be Daniel Dubois'
You
next
think,
fight.
yeah?
Yeah.
You think he's ready for a rematch?
100%. Listen, right that wrong.
I mean, you got a wounded animal in Dillian Whyte there.
You've got Dillian Whyte. I'm telling you now, is a dangerous fight for Daniel Dubois.
Yeah. Well, this is it. If Daniel Dubois comes through
Do you know what, Ron?
Yep.
Right. Do you know one thing I will say is about Dillian Whyte? He's not won the world title, but he has got the second best CV in that heavyweight division right now.
Agreed.
Behind Anthony Joshua. His CV is brilliant.
Yeah.
The only thing that Dillian Whyte does not have to add to his career is a world title. And I actually hope he gets a world title. Don't be fooled by the fact that he's just lost to Tyson Fury. The guy's is a hard night's work for anybody.
Yeah.
And I think for Daniel Dubois, it's a dangerous fight. You know, the fight with Joe Joyce, and Joe Joyce is not a powerful fighter, but it's a very basic fight, and basic boxing skill is what beat Daniel Dubois.
But you don't think that since working with McGuigan, that Daniel Dubois has improved and he's worked on those?
I can't judge him off the last. I'm not judging him off the last few parts. I'm sorry.
No. I totally. I do not dismiss that. I think that's a valid point you're making. The level of opposition that he's fought is not been good enough.
Mm-hmm. It's ludicrous.
Yeah. But if you're, Shane McGuigan called it straight after he won that fight. We want Dillian Whyte.
Do you know what?
That was a weird. It's just
to know where Daniel Dubois is right now. Kubrat Pulev's a good fight for him as well. Kubrat Pulev fought for a world title. He's fought the likes of Joshua. Fought Derek Chisora. He's fought Klitschko. That's a good fight for Daniel Dubois next. Just get him in there with somebody that's is not just turning up to roll over for somebody. Not somebody that's fought flipping Miguel the taxi driver and Chavez the butcher.
Andy Ruiz.
Win of Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. Another good fight for him.
I'd like that.
But don't put him in with Dillian Whyte yet, because I just think Dillian Whyte would.
You don't think Dillian Whyte's on the downhill now?
No.
How does he get now?
I put Dillian Whyte in the top 5 heavyweights right now.
Yeah, but you don't think after that defeat, he's 33, 34 now?
I'm just
kind of being devil's
not the
advocate
type of fight. Look, the guy lost to Povetkin, and everyone thought, yeah, he's done. He come back and he did what he had to do. When his back's been against the ropes, he's come back bigger and better. The defeat against Joshua, he took a lot of punishment against Joshua. Come back, rebuilt, British title, fought on big bills, 2 fights with Chisora, Oscar Rivas, Joseph Parker, became a box office name. He's still a big name in this division. I just don't think he's the right fight right now for Daniel Dubois. Maybe, perhaps next summer, but I think right now with Daniel Dubois, you've got to get him in there with someone like a Kubrat Pulev next. Just
somebody who will give him rounds.
Someone who will give him rounds.
Great technique.
Someone who's not going to turn up to roll over. Not somebody that we've never heard of. Not like a Fujimoto or...
No.
You know what I mean? Just the guy's just been to America. He's fought a guy that didn't even land a glove on him throughout the 4 rounds. Let's put him in there with somebody who's going to keep him busy.
Okay, I take that point on board.
I don't think Whyte versus Dubois is a good fight. I like that fight.
Yeah, that's a brilliant fight.
Not yet.
You got young pup here.
Young line versus old line.
Exactly.
As the Duke once said in Rocky 5.
Exactly.
All right, another guy that wants to return to the heavyweight division is Deontay Wilder. Rumours are that he's Robert Helenius, who was a big babyface in the last 2 fights.
Who did he fight?
Kawanaki. Yeah,
Kawanaki. Yeah.
2 big wins for Robert Helenius. But I just want to say that if Deontay Wilder does come back into boxing, I'm over the moon. Because he's still a big name in the division.
Absolutely. Ferocious power.
100%.
We haven't seen in the heavyweight since Mike Tyson. This guy when he knocked people out, he put them to sleep, kind of thing. That's how bad he was. I remember his fight against, who am I thinking of? The other American that fought against Joshua.
Brazil.
Dominic
was
Brazil. The
dirty,
way
that was,
he ended him there, the way he ended Luis Ortiz. These are, I really hope we see a good version of Deontay Wilder kind of moving forward, because we need that. How much more excitement is there when he's in the mix?
It makes the division 10 times better.
Look, I think. Okay, I get from the feeling that you're dead against Whyte versus.
I'm not dead against it. I'm just saying.
But you're not. You're just saying that is the wrong fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can see your reasons. I disagree, but why Whyte against
why not
Deontay Wilder?
But first let's just try focus on Robert Helenius. I mean, you've got to look at the fact that he's had 2 grueling defeats against Tyson Fury. So you have to question what's left in his tank, because they were, the second fight and the third fight were tough fights for him. Even though he had a lot of success in the third fight, and he might have even won the third fight had things gone differently, but it didn't. So I think Robert Helenius is a good test for him to get back into the ring. It kind of goes to tell us where he's at, what else he has to offer in this division. He's not got any younger overnight. I believe he's 34 years old now. But at the end of the day, look, whether people like it or not, he is a former world champion. He defended that belt 10 times, regardless of whether he defended against Mickey, the taxi driver, and Thomas, the bin cleaner. It doesn't matter. The guy defended one of the most prestigious belts in boxing history 10 times. Yeah, and he gave me one of the best trilogies of my life with Tyson Fury. So hats off to the guy. Again, absorbed a lot of punishment. Never helped himself with all the excuses he come out with. But he was still man enough to get back in there with a guy that smashed him to pieces in the second fight, i.e. Tyson Fury. So this fight with Robert Helenius, I'm excited by it because I'm glad he's getting back in the ring. I'm glad he's giving it another go. Fights with the likes of Joshua still a big fight. Dillian Whyte still a big fight. I don't think people would rule out wanting to see a 4 fight of him and Tyson Fury. He's still got big fights to offer on, so why would this guy want to walk away from the sport? But as I mentioned, it's all about seeing what's left in the tank. Well, what do you think is left in the tank? He's wanted to come back in boxing, so one, that's a good sign. But personally, what do you think is left in the tank?
I hope so. I can definitely see him being someone people would pay to watch. That's without doubt. He's excitement. How he fights is like none other than what we've seen. There's a lot of criticism of his technique, and he's had Malik Scott in his corner, tried to work with him. I think a firing, the way he finishes opponents, people will stay up and watch that, regardless of, whatever happened in his Tyson Fury fights. They were brawls. People forget, people kind of forget that he knocked him down how many times? About 4 or 5 times?
Four times
Across the 3 fights. Tyson Fury, he has gone down in previous fights, but not in that manner where we thought that, oh my God, Tyson Fury's going to lose this.
Should I be honest with you, Ron? That first knockdown in the third fight, I was genuinely worried for Tyson Fury.
Oh, the final round?
No. The final round, I can't explain how the guy got up. But when he got knocked down in the third fight for the first time, I was thinking, there's something not right here. I was worried.
Yeah.
But that
says it all.
That's the element of surprise you get with Deontay Wilder.
Yeah. I mean, look what happened against Luis Ortiz.
He lost every round against Luis Ortiz. In both fights.
And he just timed that punch, and it was lights out for him. How can we dismiss this guy? He
gets a lot of stick, and I think it's harsh, man, because the guy is still as long as he's still got that power. And if he keeps Malik Scott, because I was genuinely impressed with the third fight, his performance for the first few rounds. I thought, he adapted pretty well.
Yeah,
but
change it up, of course.
One thing about him is, and I watched the third fight a few weeks ago, right? And I noticed that his jabs were presenting a lot of power in them. If he can master a jab properly, and I know people are going to be like, well, he's a former world champion. Why did he not master a jab early on in his career? Which is fine, but some fights
are
are
level
different.
of opposition
Exactly.
he was facing
but
compared to where he's at now. Yeah,
exactly. If he can like a few tweaks under Malik Scott, and if he can just get a few basic boxing skills, there's something potentially to work there with.
When's that fight projected?
I believe
Is it
there's
October,
rumours for
November?
October and November, but I am generally happy that he's looking to come back into boxing.
Is that with Malik Scott in his corner?
I hope so, yeah.
I hope so, because they seem to have something in place against Tyson Fury. Clearly, it didn't work, and
But it nearly did.
yeah, it nearly did. He knocked him down twice in that fight. So, but again, you asked that question. He's definitely still got lots
There's
of offer.
still a lot in the tank with Deontay Wilder, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to see that fight against Joshua. If Fury's like, say, my bags are done, I'm done, I'm packing my bags, I'm done, I'm finished from this sport, then there's lots of other fights out there.
Yeah, 100%. There's a fight with Joshua that I'd love to see. There's Dillian Whyte, there's Usyk, there's Ruiz, there's Ortiz, Parker, Joyce. Dubois one day. That's 8 fights. Potentially, the guy could. Well, he's not going to fight all 8 of those guys, but he's still going to. If he beats Robert Helenius, which I expect him to do, he can easily fight 4 of those 8 I've just named.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, I think. But this is his comeback fight, so
Yeah.
he's got to take that fight. He's got to make. It's going to be good matchmaking.
Yeah.
Someone that they think that they can get the win against. That's not too overly dangerous, but Helenius is an experienced kind of professional.
2 wins against Kawanaki.
And he's been around for years. He's fought. I mean, he's beat Chisora as well.
He fought Dillian Whyte.
Dillian Whyte. That was a narrow defeat, wasn't it? I can't remember how
It
that
wasn't. I was there live when Joshua fought Takam, and it wasn't a great fight. But he's
This is it.
This is his biggest fight.
This is his biggest fight, and I wouldn't rule him out if he wins this. Poof.
Well, if he wins this, Deontay Wilder's done in boxing.
Yep, that too. But then it opens up doors for him. That potential fights that he could have, winner of Ruiz versus Ortiz. That could be a potential fight. But I reckon that those 2 fights that you mentioned, the winners should fight each other.
Which ones?
Ruiz and Ortiz.
Ortiz versus the winner of Wilder Helenius.
Why not?
I personally think if he was to beat Robert Helenius, which I expect him to beat, Dillian Whyte fight would be great. Build up to that would be brilliant. You got 2 personalities that are both stubborn and both love to give a bit of back and forth along the press conference table. Imagine that face off, and there's always been a bit of needle between those 2 as well. The one disappointing thing about the Whyte Fury thing is we didn't get that needle. We didn't get that bite that we thought we would get, and
he was nowhere to be seen.
It was,
He
yeah.
refused
So
to participate.
I know, but it kind of says
They didn't have a face off, did they? Like, what do you call it? Gloves are off, kind of.
No, they didn't.
I can't remember.
So I know people will be like, oh, well, we're just wanting too much, but these are the kind of things that you'd love to see before the fight is the build up. So definitely get these 2 across each other one day, and who knows what can happen.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, the heavyweight scene right now, I mean, it's just.
We have to. I mean, my only issue with it is we have to wait far too long between.
Do you know what the funny thing is, Ron? I just said that the heavyweight division right now is exciting. We've only seen one big heavyweight fight this year, and that's Fury versus Whyte.
Wow, that says it.
And we're in August. But we're getting the rematch between Usyk Joshua. We're getting Parker versus Joyce. Hopefully, we still get Fury versus Hunter rescheduled at some point. Rumours are that we're getting
That's
Dubois.
gonna be a good fight.
Yeah, rumours are.
I mean, Fury's been Fury's been in the background, and he's just lost out in those kind of.
Well, at the moment, I don't know what's going on with that fight, but that is a fight I'd like to see because I think
Michael Hunter.
Hunter needs it more than Hughie Fury because at least Hughie Fury's been a bit active.
Yeah.
Michael Hunter, since that fight against Povetkin, has just not really been anywhere to be seen, and that was 2019, so that's nearly 3 years ago.
Is that how long he's been out of the ring then?
I think he's fought once after that. But look, nonetheless, having said that, it's just a good opportunity. Comes down to the UK, gets on the Sky Sports show. Michael Hunter's a decent fighter.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, he gave Usyk a good shot.
Yeah.
That was the only defeat on his record, so we know how good Usyk is. Could that be a rematch in the making?
It's whatever offers the most, eh? Yeah. Right, well, anyway, that's all we've got time for on podcast 56, Ron. We'll obviously be doing another podcast shortly for the big one, Saudi Arabia, Usyk Joshua.
I look forward to that one.
Yeah, 100%. But Ron, pleasure as always. Thank you for joining us, bud. And to the viewers out there already, thank you very much for taking your time out to listen to podcast 56. You guys know what to do. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell for further and future Lights Out notifications. If you want to check out more Lights Out content, social media links are below in the description. And if you also want to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, don't forget to check out the links below in the description. Thank you for listening and watching the Lights Out Boxing podcast.